so much, Amber, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure, and I'm really excited to say you are my last guest of season 2. So this is a profound moment for me personally.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to just do a quick introduction because Amber deserves an introduction, and this is a very important book, funny enough. So I'm just going to go straight into it because you've got a wealth of knowledge in this area. So, uh, Amber Lea Starfire is an author, editor, and creative writing coach with a passion for journaling and helping others tell their life stories. Her previous books on journaling include Journaling Through Relationships, Journaling the Chakras, and Week by Week, a year's worth of journaling prompts and meditations. She is also the author of Not the Mother I Remember, a memoir, finalist for the 2015 Next Generation Indie Book Awards and 2013 to 2014 Sarton Women's Literary Awards. An accidental Jesus freak, one woman's journey from fundamentalism to freedom, as well as co-editor of the award-winning anthology Times They Were A-Changing, Women Remember the 60s and 70s. And so you can find her at www.writingthroughlife.com. And she literally wrote the definitive guide on journaling with Journaling for Dummies, which is the book we're looking at. So, Amber, again, kudos to you. Obviously, got a massive amount of knowledge in this area. So, thank you for sharing your advice with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And I'm
Awesome.
looking forward to the interview.
Excellent. I'm glad. There's a few juicy questions coming your way. So I've got to ask first of all,
Uh-oh.
obviously, yeah, I'm like, obviously for you, like, why do you journal and why do you think like journaling is actually important?
Well, journaling for me is a way that I process my thoughts and emotions. And I'm very verbal, and it's something I've done since I was a child. I was one of those little girls that had a little diary, pink diary with a little key lock. And I used to write my feelings in it, even before that was a thing. And part of that might have been due to the fact that I was the only girl in a family of a lot of boys.
Well,
And it was sort of my personal space. It was the place where I could be alone and be able to process those things. And it's always been that way for me. So if I have emotions that I need to express, or maybe I'm confused about something, or maybe even I have a big decision I need to make, for me, writing about it can really clarify how I feel. And it cuts through the confusion. That's one of the reasons that I journal. Another is that it's a way of documenting my life. I'm always amazed when I look back. I reread some of my old journals and I'm like, wow, I forgot all about that. Or, I'm writing a memoir like I have, and I use those as resource materials. So that's another good reason. And it helps you understand. You can look back and see, wow, I've really grown since that time in my life. Or, gee, I'm repeating these same old patterns. And so it's a tool that covers a wide variety of reasons.
yeah, no, it's one of those things where all my life I've attempted to journal like in some shape or form, but just done it very badly. So, and one of the things is that I really struggle with is making it a regular habit. So, how do you do it? Like, how do you stick to it?
Well, again, for me, the easiest way, and I think that habits, people who write books on forming habits, talk about this, where if you make it a regular part of your day in some way and pair it with other activities. So for me, I often journal while I'm having my cup of coffee in the morning.
Oh,
That's kind of like my paired activity, so to speak. I
yeah.
really enjoy my cup of coffee in the morning. And I really enjoy that quiet time to myself. When my children were small, I didn't have that luxury. And I would actually wake up really early, like 4:30 in the morning, so that I could have time to myself before the kids woke up. Other people might choose to stay up late at night, or find time during a break at work. But that pairing it with something else, especially something that you enjoy, is a great way to build a habit. And also remember that it doesn't have to be every day. I recommend that because it's easier to make journaling a normal part of your life if you do
Mm.
it every day, at least for a while. But for some people, they don't feel that urge or need to write. And so you could set it up as, 2 or 3 times a week and actually put it on your calendar with a reminder. But then you got to stick to it.
Yeah, exactly. And do you think like there are people who can actually just stick with it and other people, who struggle with it? Do you think there are like two versions of this, sort of these kind of people? Because, I feel like some people struggle whilst other people do it really well.
Well, I think if you're struggling, when you say really well and really badly, that first of all, I just kind of went, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
There is no way to journal badly. I mean, it's such a personal thing. There is no such thing as wrong or right way to do it. There is no such thing as a wrong or right way to schedule it. And maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe thinking that there's a right way to do it is
Mm.
part of the struggle in and of itself. If you allow yourself to just be you, I think that's the first thing. And then again, why do you want to journal? Do you want to journal because you feel like you should? I mean, that right there is a red flag for me, because you're never going to do anything that you think you should do.
Mm.
Um, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The it's about feeling like you want to or need to, that it provides something for you. So having an idea of what it is you actually want to get out of your journaling time, even on a daily basis. So when I sit down to journal, sometimes I don't have anything in mind. Sometimes I just like don't have any worries or things that are pressing on my mind. And I say to myself, okay, what do I want to get out of my time writing this morning? And that's a good place to start. You have to understand what you want out of
Mm.
it. And actually, I do talk about that in Journaling for Dummies in the beginning, and about preparing to write is looking at your reasons for journaling. Because, I can't say journaling is for everybody 100%, even though I feel like it is. um, because I see so many benefits and I think, oh,
Yeah.
it's for everybody. But again, everyone is different. And I'm very verbal, obviously. You can tell the speed at which I speak. Um, and some people aren't. And that's where art journaling or things like that, a creative journaling, might be better suited. If you're a more visual thinker, maybe that's the way to start, is to start by using images to express your feelings and thoughts, and get playful with it. And then that creates something where you're not just feeling like, oh, I have to put words on the page.
Oh,
So
actually,
those are some thoughts.
do you know that like segues like it perfectly to the next sort of question I have, which is obviously, so how many different reasons do people have to journal? Are there lots of different reasons? And like, why do you think there are like maybe a multitude of reasons someone would journal and not just one straight reason?
Well, again, I think there are as many reasons to journal as there are people.
Mm.
And for me, as I mentioned, processing thoughts, emotions, gaining clarity, self awareness is a huge one. Reducing stress, I mean, that's well documented. Research has shown that journaling reduces stress and can actually improve your physical health. There are studies linking journaling to
Mm.
improved cardiovascular health, which is very interesting to me. And that, I'm sure, probably has to do with reducing stress. It's kind of like making a list of to-dos. How if you write down things, it kind of releases your mind from having to think about them, and you can
Mm.
return to the list. So even just doing to-do lists, which is you could think of as a form of journaling,
Mm.
can reduce stress because you're no longer trying to remember or hold everything in your mind. And it's kind of like that. Some people use journals as their confidant. It's like their person to talk to who's never judgmental, who always listens.
Mm.
It can be a place to play. It can be a place to organize your thinking, or even productivity. So you write your goals and you keep track of your goals and things like that. And some people use gratitude journaling. It's
Mm.
very simple, and that's all they do. And that's a great way of journaling. Actually, I don't know if you've ever tried it, but
Yeah.
just commit to doing 30 days of journaling just for gratitude, and it's amazing how it can change your outlook.
Yeah,
So yeah, there are a lot of reasons.
you just reminded me because I started. doing a gratitude journal online, so people would see it, so that I would be held accountable, because I've got
Mm-hmm.
no way to sort of continue otherwise. So I started just doing this on this new social media platform, Mastodon, which is a lot more kind of personal anyway. So people are much more friendly, for one. So it's there's a lot of people talking about gratitude, so it made it easier to just sort of talk about it. But do you know, there's one thing, I'm throwing a spanner in the works, because basically this is one thing which I really struggle with, which is perfectionism. And I had like a bullet journal, I had all these kind of very creative things, and I didn't use any of them, because in my head I was like, oh, it's not pretty enough, or I'm not making it nice enough. Now, how do I stop those ridiculous thoughts to actually make a journal look pretty, or written well, or grammatical mistakes? Oh no. So
Yes, the gremlin, the inner critic in the room. Yeah, that's a tough one, and I say you write about it. You take it head on. You talk to your inner critic, and in fact, I had one point where I told my inner critic, I said, you know what, you're not welcome here. Get out. I'll call you back in about half an hour, and then you can complain all you want. But for right now, you're not welcome. And you actually kind of have to have that internal conversation, and that's self-awareness right there, understanding that you're judging yourself while you're doing something is really important, and to address it, and even get into, well, what are the underlying reasons or fears behind this judgment? What is it that I fear if I don't do this perfectly? And I even have a journaling prompt, or we can actually just we can talk about fears in general, because people have a lot of fear around journaling. It surprises me, because it's always been something that I was drawn to naturally. But when I coach and I talk to a lot of people who have struggled with journaling on one level or another, they experience a variety of fears. And one is this fear of imperfection, of not writing something that's worthy, or being too banal, or whatever. And so that's more of the internal critic fear. And again, addressing that head on. And then there's really two kinds of fears. There's a rational fear and there's irrational, right? Rational fear is the fear you feel when you're being chased by a tiger. That's rational. Or an irrational is when you think there's a snake under your bed when there's not, right? You're having a nightmare. Okay, so there's two kinds of fear. And I think identifying the type of fear that we feel, is this rational or irrational? Is there really some actual consequence that could occur to me because of what I fear? An example of that might be someone who fears that someone's going to read their journal. And then so they're afraid to write down their honest thoughts, because they're afraid someone's going to read it. Well, you have to look at what's that fear grounded on? Right? If you live in a household where you have a partner who snoops into your things, that's probably a pretty rational fear, right? If you don't live in a household like that, and where people respect each other's privacy and boundaries, maybe that's not a rational fear. And so you have to look at what is exactly. So what's the worst thing that could happen if somebody read your journal? What do I fear would happen? And then you write about that. And then you dig even deeper. Well, if that happened, what am I afraid of? So, for example, if someone read my journal, I'm afraid they would think less of me. Well, if they thought less of me, what would I be afraid of happening as a result of that? Well, maybe they wouldn't like me anymore. Well, if they didn't like me, what am I afraid of if they didn't like me? And you just keep digging. And finally, sometimes you get down to even it's a fear of mortality, or it's a fear of being alone. And then once you have that, you understand the core underlying feeling of that fear, or the reason for it, then you can address it. You can say, okay, so what do I need to do to make myself feel safe? Right? And then if you have a rational fear, and either way, there's ways to lock your journal up if you like to physically journal. There's ways you can have a little safe somewhere, if it was really that. Another way even would be, if you like to journal by hand or to do artwork, is to do it, take a picture or PDF scan of it, put it on the cloud, and destroy the original.
Mm.
You can always password protect your online documents. So, or use an online journal like you are with your gratitude journal. Unless someone knows your password, they're not likely to get in and mess with it, right? Of course, you're doing it publicly, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, do you know what? The fear aspect is really interesting because one of the other aspects I thought was like being scared to reveal something to yourself. You know, what do you think is the best way to deal with this? Because sometimes I think people are afraid that they'll show something that they may not like, or just have to deal with feelings that they can't handle in that moment.
Right, right. Well, I want to be sensitive here because, well, first of all, we all have a dark side. I think it's recognizing that if you have a dark side, no matter how dark, it's it's human nature. And to think that you're a bad person because you have these dark feelings or even hatred, or
Mm.
you think murderous thoughts about somebody, I mean, it happens. We all are like that. And in fact, a journal is a safe place to address that dark
Mm.
side, because it's just for your eyes only and you're not taking it out on anybody. Let's say you feel rage and you're afraid of that rage, and you're afraid of putting it out on the page because you don't know what will happen. Well, that's the safest place for it to be, much safer than taking it out on a partner or your children,
Mm.
right? So, also, doing journaling in conjunction with professional therapy can also, I really encourage that in situations where people feel that their feelings are overwhelming,
Mm.
where they're really truly afraid. I've had a couple of clients that really struggled due to abusive childhoods,
Mm.
things like that made it very difficult. They were easily triggered even by their own words or
Wow.
by their own drawings, and in that situation, definitely, I highly recommend getting some professional help. But journaling can be used with that to help you heal, to help you overcome, to help. And this is another reason for journaling. It's a great way to address the monster in the closet,
Mm.
and to shine some light in that closet and find out. Oh, this is that children's movie where the monsters,
Yeah.
where the
Yes,
monsters really
indeed.
turns out to be this nice fuzzy fun fun person. But the monster's there for a reason. Any dark side that you have is there for a reason to protect you. Usually, it's a protective response, and so it's figuring out why that monster is there, what it's doing to help you, and then how you can adjust your relationship with it to allow you more freedom to be who you want to be.
Mm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, powerful. Because it's true. It's. There's a lot, isn't it, when it comes to journaling? It is quite something. And you mentioned this before regarding privacy and things like that. So how do you set boundaries to write? And I explained this, I think, to you before, which was just in terms of making sure you protect your time, space to actually do it, because obviously life sometimes gets in the way and it tends to become sort of secondary when you've got things on. So how do you set that, make sure you actually protect that time for journaling?
Right, and that's a big key. So, and a lot depends on your life situation, obviously. First of all, remember that even 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes, you'd be surprised what you can write in 5 minutes. I've done it, like, or just 5 minutes a day because my life was so busy.
Mm.
Um, and just even that little bit, it's amazing. So first of all, to remember that it's not doesn't have to be like a big project where you have to sit down and light candles, and it's nice when you can do that, but you can't always do that. So to remember that first, to release that judgment from yourself that it has to be a big deal, is helpful if you have a really busy life. Secondly, it's and probably most important is valuing yourself enough to make it a priority,
Mm.
because it's like taking care of yourself. It's like brushing your teeth. Would you not brush your teeth because your life is too busy? Right?
Yeah.
No.
Mm.
It's kind of like that. Journaling, is can be a life habit that affects your health positively in the same way that some of our other smaller habits do. And so if you kind of look at it that way, that helps you make it more of a priority. It helps you see it as something that this is just something I need to do as part of my life in order to be healthy and strong emotionally and maybe even physically. So that's the first thing. Second, then you have to deal with those external sabotaging efforts. So if you live in a family, they don't like it when you go away and you're not accessible, even if for 15 minutes. If you're a young mother and you've got a toddler, you can't even go to the bathroom. They're banging on the door. And so you have to adjust, you have to figure out, one, what works best for your family or the people around you. And then you need to say, hey, this is my time. I need you to respect that. If the kids are a little older, you can put a do not disturb sign on the door and say, do not disturb me under penalty of, unless the house is burning down. You can have, if you have someone else in the house that can watch them, you can say, hey, can you deal with anything they have? Go ask dad, go ask mom if, if you have any questions during this next half hour. Or like I mentioned earlier, you could wake up extra early in the morning or stay up a little later at night so you have that time to yourself. But again, it's very individual. But I think setting those boundaries with people around you and having them understand that this is your me time, and also with yourself that this is your me time. So those are the two areas. And I've had times in my life where I journaled at lunchtime at work, where I would actually go outside, like sit under a tree for 15 minutes and journal,
That's
and
nice.
then come back to work. And that was my only time to do it. So,
Oh wow, that actually sounds really nice. If it wasn't raining here all the time, that just sounds ideal. But actually,
yes.
and I wanted to ask you, like, what's your personal method of journaling, like the one that you would say is your go-to then?
Well, being a verbal person, tend to mostly do free writing in combination with a structured reflective writing method, which is where you ask questions that deepen the reflection to help you get to layers underneath. Uh, though sometimes I get bored with that, and then I'll
Hmm.
use other methods. I'll use creative journaling. I will. I've done bullet journaling a little bit. That
Hmm.
is not my favorite form
Yeah.
of journaling. I know a lot of people really like it. To me, there's a lot of redundancy in it, and that's the purpose of it. It's an organizational tool, and I just don't feel like I need
Hmm.
it that much. But it is a good positive way to journal. But for me, I write a lot about what is going on in my life, my responses and feelings to it. And then if something triggers my mind, I'm like, well, why am I responding that way? Then I'll kind of go down the reflective um, path. And I also journal using my computer
Hmm.
rather than hand journal. That is because I type really fast.
Hmm.
And for me, I can actually close my eyes and type almost as fast as I think. And
Wow.
so it allows me to do kind of a stream of consciousness output. I can just blah, everything on the page, and then I can go back and look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. I wonder, what's going on here. And so it varies a lot. A lot of people like to handwrite because it slows them down
Hmm.
and it's more tactile. So that's a very individual thing, but I most often actually use my keyboard.
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. That's great, and it's just so useful as well because anyone can use that, isn't it? So huge thanks, Amber. Really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me and just being so open and candid about how to do these things because it's not that straightforward. But really appreciate how you made it accessible for all of us.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure absolutely to be here, and I appreciate the invitation, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about your personal journaling journey as
Yeah.
time goes forward.
Well, I look forward to sharing it with you, which should be quite eventful, I'm sure.